Have you ever wondered what phase the moon was in on the day you were born and what that might say about you? In tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about the different phases that a person could be born under, what that energy means, and how it can show up in your personality and also in your life patterns. And if you don't know the birth phase of your moon, I'll show you a simple way to look that up. So, merry meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. Tonight's episode is all about what the moon phase of your birth says about you. So, if you are joining us live, say hi in the chat. And as always, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So leave questions and comments. I'll be watching the chat as we go, and we will have that Q&A at the end as well. So I'm going to dive in. There's a lot to talk about tonight. I'm first going to let you know a little bit about how to look it up for any of those of you who don't know what phase of the moon you were born in. I'm going to drop this link here in the chat, and you can go ahead and look this up if you're unsure. I also actually recommend, if you think you know what phase of the moon you were born under, I would recommend looking this up anyway. I'm just going to note here that there are some apps or some websites where you can look this up that do not ask you for your place of birth, and sometimes they don't even ask you for the time. They just ask you for the date. That's usually, for about probably 80% of the people, that's enough information to get this correct. But for other people, it won't be enough information. And so I'll explain as we go a little bit about my own. I'm born kind of in between two phases, and depending on what calculator I'm using, I see two different things. But check that out. Even if you think you know what it is, just verify that that is correct. Okay, so and I will also let you know is if you are looking up on a different app, just verify that it does ask you for your place of birth as well as your time. That information is probably necessary for some of us to get this right. So let's first talk about what is the birth phase, okay? So your birth phase is not the same as your moon sign. So that actually will be a future episode we're going to do in a couple of weeks. But those two things are not the same. The moon phase is how much of the moon's face was illuminated at the time of your birth. Now, the lunar cycle is divided into traditionally about 8 pieces, sometimes 9, sometimes even more, as we get narrower and narrower into the definition of what a phase means. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the 8 main phases, which are usually the ones that would come up on a moon phase calculator, like the one I shared with you. But we will also talk about the 9th phase, the dark moon, and kind of how to know if you should also consider that one. Now, what I also want you to consider as we go through this episode is that this is not meant to, just like anything in astrology, and this isn't an astrology class, so we're just going to be talking about the patterns of, this very specific thing in your that is associated with your birth. But in any time that we're looking at the stars, we're trying to, and the planets, and we're trying to make kind of assumptions about ourselves, we want to remember that it's never meant to box us in. It's never meant to say that something is fate. It's meant to be a lens for you to use to notice patterns about yourself. Okay, so I already mentioned how to check your moon phase. So if you are joining us later, if you're kind of joining us since then, I have dropped in the chat a place where you can look up the moon phase. Even if you think you know what it is, I suggest you look it up on this one just to double check. And we're going to start with the new moon. So before I do that, though, I'm going to jump into the chat and let's say hi to some of those who are joining us. So merry meet to Joanne and Cersei and Jenny. Merry meet, everybody. Anybody else who is here, let us know. And also let us know in the chat. Do you know what your birth moon phase is? And if you don't, use my tool there, look it up, or the tool I shared, look that up and let us know. And then as we go through yours, let us know if it resonates with you. Okay, so we're going to start with the new moon. So we're going to talk about the core energy at each phase. We're going to talk about the strengths of the people who are born under those phases. And we're also going to talk about kind of the shadow side or the challenges that can show up and what that can mean and how you can work with that. So when it comes to the new moon, the core energy of the new moon is beginnings, new beginnings, instinct, and emergence. So if you think about that particular phase of the moon, that is day one, right? In many cases, this is just the smallest little sliver of light that we're seeing. The strengths of a person born under a new moon are it makes a person more spontaneous. It can make them more visionary and open to possibilities. If you think about what the new moon phase means, this is the time when there are so many possibilities. The phase can open up into so many different pathways at that point, right? People who are born under a new moon also may be more willing to begin before everything is figured out, where others may sort of dig their feet in and really insist on knowing the pathway. Those born under a new moon feel more comfortable just moving forward, even if the plan isn't totally known yet. Now, those are some very positive things, right? Now, the challenges, just like everything in life, we could say it's challenges. If you don't like that word, you could say the shadow side of this. People who are born under a new moon, they may leap in before they're ready. And sometimes that can cause issues if there are times when planning would have been necessary. They may struggle with planning and with patience, right? Because they just want to get going. Now, this is the phase that is most associated with new beginnings and with intuition. So we do often think of people who are born at the new moon and also at the full moon as being more intuitive, but people can also struggle with their intuition and struggle in trusting it. So let us know in the chat when we get to your phase. Is this you? Let us know what you think about the description of your moon phase. Now, here's some other things to consider as we go, though. If you feel like this is you, so like for example, the new moon, if it is you and it doesn't resonate with you, here's something to think about. These can be areas to work on. So if you struggle with the strengths of the phase you were born under, these can be areas that you can work on in your spiritual work, in your shadow work. If you're ever wondering, what do I do in my shadow work? You can start focusing on some of those areas that are meant to be strengths, but that you don't feel that you shine in those places. Now, you can also think of the challenges or the shadow side of your moon phase, and that can give you even further direction for your shadow work. All right, so we're going to move on, but let us know if you are a new moon. Let us know what you think of that. Also, feel free to look up other people in your life, your kids, your spouses, your partners, bosses, friends, relatives. Let us know about them too, and if these things resonate. All right, so we're moving on now to the waxing crescent. So we're going to do these all in order. And I see Angie says she is waxing gibbous, so we'll be there in just a moment. And all right, so here we go with waxing crescent. So this is the core energy of the the core energy of the waxing crescent is becoming, building, and intention. So if you think about this phase, we've moved past the new moon phase. This is the phase where we're building energy, right? Now, the strengths of someone born under a waxing crescent, can make them more hopeful. It can make them more motivated. And it can mean that these people are learning how to trust themselves. And so that can be a real place where a person can see growth in their life when they're born under a waxing crescent. And people who are born under a waxing crescent also seem to be more willingness to grow into something. So they're kind of aware of the fact that they are growing and that their pathway may be marked by those kind of growth milestones. Now, the challenges of a person born under a waxing crescent can be self-doubt and uncertainty. So they're kind of in the middle, right? So not the new moon, not the full moon, but somewhere in the middle. They can be uncertain. They can feel self-doubt because of this. And they can also have this sense that they're not quite there yet. Now, this is also the phase that is often linked to setting intentions and making plans. So I'm just giving you that too for kind of insight. Later at the end, we'll talk about what is your kind of lunar power phase. Hint, it is the phase that you were born under, but I'll explain a little bit more about what that means. But that doesn't mean that the other phases are unimportant to us. Just so you know, the waxing crescent phase is really where we set our intentions and we start to make our plans. If you are born under a waxing crescent, let us know. And again, if you're joining us late, remember in the chat, I put a link where you can find a little calculator you can go to. If you're watching back on YouTube later, you'll also find that in the comments. Okay, so Jenny said new moon for her. So let us know if the description resonates for you. And now we're going to move into the first quarter. So the core energy of the first quarter. So again, kind of going back to what the phase means, right? From a physical perspective, it is us looking up at the moon. This is how much of the moon is illuminated. At the first quarter, you'll see the right hand phase of that, or right hand half of that fully illuminated, and then the left hand side will be dark. The core energy of the first quarter is action, momentum, and decision. Now, the strengths of a person born under the first quarter is that they are very driven, they're very resilient, and they can be very good under pressure. So these are the people who are willing to make things happen. But there is always the shadow side of every phase. And those who are born under a first quarter may feel a great inner tension. They may be quite impatient. They may find conflict, whether it's outside of them or also inner conflict. And they may also find that that sometimes they are forcing their movement or movement around them too hard. Now, this is a phase that is often connected with taking action and making changes. So every cycle that we move through, every lunar cycle that we move through, this is the phase when you really can take action. This is the moment when you sort of decide, yeah, we're going to do that, and you move forward. Now, so let us know if you are a first quarter. I also want to explain to you how I relate to this. So if I put my information into a birth moon calculator, I will find two different answers depending on the one I'm using. Sometimes I am a waxing crescent, and sometimes I am first quarter. I'm going to explain to you what I think about this. So I relate to both, and you may find if you're born, just like in astrology, if you're born on the cusp of something, you will often relate to both sides of it. So I do feel that I relate to both waxing crescent and to first quarter. Though when I read these descriptions here to you, I have to say at this part of my life, I probably relate more to the first quarter. Now, when I put my information into the calculator I shared with you that actually has the birth place and time, or that asks for those two things, it does come up as waxing crescent. Now, what do I do about the fact that I relate more to the first quarter? Well, I don't have to do anything at all. But here's kind of my take on it. Sometimes a person's birth time can be incorrect by 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. Some birth certificates didn't actually have the correct time written on them at the time of birth. It was written later based on the recollection of people who were there in the birthing room. So it is possible that I was born a little bit later, which would make me actually a first quarter and would make a little bit more sense. So just something to note, if the calculator tells you one thing, but you're resonating on either side of it, feel free to look at the two opposite sides, or the two sides. And it's possible that you were born at a different time. Most things in your astrological chart really won't make a difference if you're off by a few minutes, even half an hour. But this can be one where the difference can make a difference. Okay, so let us know, anybody who is a first quarter, let us know in the chat. So Joanne says she's a waxing crescent, so let us know if that resonated with you. Samantha said that she was born on the 17th day of the moon, just past the full moon, early waning gibbous ovate. She says we're gonna call it gibbous in tonight's episode. Kelly said she is a waxing gibbous, and that's what we're about to come to now. Okay, so waxing gibbous. So the core energy of the waxing gibbous. So this energy is about refinement, preparation, devotion, and growth. And if you think about what is going on in the moon at that time, there's an upswing of energy. We're getting closer to the full moon. This is really about growth, right? If you think about this sort of where this would relate to the wheel of the year, this would be the time leading from like Beltane to Litha. So this is really fiery growth energy, right? Now, the strengths of a person born under a waxing gibbous are thoughtful. They're thoughtful. They are looking to improve themselves and improve the things around them. They are very committed to what they are doing. They're able to seek out what still needs work. So it's not quite the full moon yet. It's not the completion of the full moon. They recognize that it's a growth in progress. Now, the challenges of a person born under a waxing gibbous can be perfectionism. So you're not quite at the full moon, but you're striving for that perfectionism. They may be more over analytical to a fault at times. They may feel like nothing is ever finished because they're in that state, like they're born at that time when the moon wasn't quite at its full completion, but almost there, right? This phase is often interpreted to be a time of refinement and in review before culmination. So that will be true every single lunar cycle when we hit the waxing gibbous. That's the sort of energy that we are in. If you are somebody born under a waxing gibbous, let us know how that relates to you. And also let us know as we go through your phase, let us know, what do you think about the strengths of that phase? What do you think about the challenges? What do you think about some of those things as being ideas for places where you can work in your spiritual work and your shadow work? All right, so that brings us to the full moon. So the full moon, the core energy of a full moon, it's about visibility, it's about intensity, it's about culmination. So we spoke in the beginning about what the phase of your birth really is about. The moon phase of your birth is really about how much of the moon's face is illuminated on that day or that night when you were born. So this is the full face of the moon. It's the strengths of a person born at the full moon. It can make them more magnetic. People are drawn to them, right? It can make them more emotionally aware. The full moon is a time when there's heightened emotions often. It can make them more expressive, and it can also make them have an ability to illuminate others. Just like the full moon illuminates all around it, people born under a full moon can help illuminate the room that they're in. The room can kind of brighten when they enter. And it can also help others feel illumination as well. Now, as all of the moon phases, there can be a challenge or a shadow side. So the shadow side of those born under a full moon is that it can make them more intense, and to a degree that it may feel uncomfortable for themselves. May feel overwhelmed at times. They may find that they are living at emotional extremes because it is the phase of the moon that is most attached to that kind of the emotional lability, I guess I should say. They can find it difficult to turn the volume down on their energy or turn the intensity down because the energy is just always intense. So kind of think about what it means to you if you are born under a full moon. How do you relate to this? Now, the full moon is the phase that is associated with culmination, with illumination, and with harvest. So every time that we get to a full moon, those are intentions that are more active in our energy, right? So let us know about the full moon. And I also want to make a note here. I'll reiterate this again at the end, but there is no one phase that's better to be born under than any other. These are just shades of the energy, and there's no one that supersedes another one. So Jen said she really related to the nothing is ever finished part of waxing gibbous. And let's see, Joanne said waxing crescent. Kelly said she very much relates to hers. Cersei said waxing gibbous. She's 10 days into the cycle. Um, okay, so let's go on to waning gibbous. All right, so the energy peaks, the energy of the lunar cycle peaks at the full moon. But remember, it doesn't make it any better than any other phase. Now, as we start coming down on the other side, we then come to the waning gibbous. So the waning gibbous, the core energy of the waning gibbous, this core energy is about sharing. It's about reflection and about making meaning. So I really think about this. So think about, I love to make connections. If you followed me a while, you probably have figured that out about me. So if you think about the solar cycle, think about what happens after we get to Litha, right? And we move into the waning half of the wheel of the year. It does become more about reflection. It's taking in the harvest, right? Then reflecting and having gratitude for what we have. And that energy, we see that energy as we come into the waxing gibbous. So the strengths of someone born in the, sorry, I should say waning gibbous. So the strengths of someone born in under the waning gibbous moon, it can make them more generous and makes them more insightful. They can be very good at teaching. Maybe they're not teachers by profession or trade, but they're just really good at teaching or disseminating knowledge. It can also make the person wish to pass on what they have learned to others, giving their wisdom, giving back. Now, there are also challenges, and the challenges of the waning gibbous are giving too much. As you can imagine, right? Gratitude is a strength, right? Giving is a strength, but overgiving is the challenge or the shadow side of that. People who are born under a waning gibbous also may find themselves over explaining things or feeling responsible for everybody's process and or progress. So remember, if you are an overgiver, regardless of whether you are a waning gibbous moon or not, if you're an overgiver, we do have to be careful. It is not our place to take on everybody else's pain and everybody else's work. We were put here for one purpose, the vast majority of us, and that one overall purpose is to work on our own kind of growth, right? Now, along the way, we help other people. We may raise other people. We may work in professions where we lift other people up. We heal other people. But at the end of the day, the core goal of most of us is to evolve spiritually, right? So we need to release this kind of need or this feeling like we gotta protect everybody from everything else. We've got to like be responsible for their process and their progress. And this is particularly true of a person born under the waning gibbous. Now, the waning gibbous is associated with reflection and gratitude and the emphasis of giving back. So every single lunar cycle, that's kind of the energy that we're feeling when we're in the waning gibbous. And if I say waxing gibbous, we're in the waning gibbous, and that's what I mean. Sometimes I go so fast, I'm misspeaking. Okay, so if you are born under a waning gibbous, let us know. If you're an overgiver, and even if you're not born under the waning gibbous, let us know how that lands for you. This is the permission you need, or I hope that you're looking for to like let go of some of that, and you don't have to be responsible for everyone. Okay, that brings us then to the last quarter. And also sometimes known as the third quarter. Now, like the first quarter you'll see, if you were looking up at the sky, you would see the right half of the moon illuminated, the left half dark. In the third quarter, last quarter, you're going to see the left-hand side illuminated and the right side dark. The core energy here is release, reevaluation, and truth testing. Now, the strengths of a person born at the third quarter or last quarter, it can make them more independent. It can make them a more independent thinker. They're a little bit more willing to question old systems than maybe the rest of us. They have a strong ability to correct course. So when they notice that they're off course, they have a better ability to recognize that and try to get back on course. Now, both quarters, both transition spaces like that, they are very good for reflecting on balance. So that is also something kind of a key to the third quarter here. People who are who are born at the third quarter, they may be more keenly aware of when they're in balance or when they are not in balance. And the challenges on the shadow side of being born under the third quarter, it can make a person more restless. It can make them feel friction with authority because they kind of want to go their own way and not basically be beholden to somebody. They may have difficulty staying with what feels outdated because again, it's like a releasing time in the cycle, and so they're ready to kind of purge. And so sometimes the rest of the world is sort of trapped in something that feels outdated, and then we recognize that, right? So a person in the third quarter moon, born at the third quarter moon, may recognize that more than the rest of us. And so they may feel that friction of like, well, I want to let go, but everybody else hasn't. This phase is tied most to release and receptivity and reevaluation. So let us know in the chat if you're born at the third quarter, last quarter moon. Does this resonate for you? And then we're going to move into the waning crescent. And so Isla said, what does it mean when born full moon in Leo? I don't know if you mean if you're born in the full moon. So this episode's all about being born under that moon. We're not discussing the signs tonight, though we are going to do a future episode when we'll talk about the different signs. But tonight we're just talking about the phase that a person was born under. Okay, so the waning crescent is the nearing the end of the lunar cycle. So one of the things that I want to note here is that there's much more to the waning crescent than just the waning crescent. The waning crescent contains, it's this last 7 days of the cycle, give or take. It also contains the balsamic moon, which is usually considered the last 72 hours of the cycle. This is where the energy kind of accelerates into like releasing energy. And then we have the dark moon, which is the day right before the new moon. And this is the time of the greatest release. Now, the issue with the moon calculator, the moon phase calculator, is unless you know like the date, like the number of the day of the lunar cycle when you were born, the calculator is just going to say waning crescent. It's not going to say balsamic or dark. So just know if you were born nearer to the end of the cycle, so even if you put in to the calculator waning, even if you put your data in and it puts out waning crescent, you may resonate more with the dark moon, which is the one I'm going to talk about next after this. But just know that most of those calculators will not tell you dark moon. The only way you would know that is if you had one that would actually tell you the day of the cycle that you were born on. Waning crescent. So the core energy here, it's about endings, it's about rest, it's about inner wisdom, and about transition, because you're transitioning into the next cycle, essentially, or getting ready to. The strengths of a person born under the waning crescent, it makes them more intuitive. It can make them more reflective. It can make them more spiritually deep. And often the person is able to sense endings before other people around them can. Now, the challenges of being born under the waning crescent, or the shadow side of that, it can make a person more tired and withdrawn. And it also can make the person feel like they're carrying more grief than other people, or maybe when they grieve, they carry it longer. This phase is often interpreted as a transitional phase, right? So every time that we hit that phase in the lunar cycle, it's a transition. We may feel like turning inward, and it's more oriented towards like the closure of something or us surrendering some energy. So let us know if you're born under a waning crescent, does that resonate? And if it doesn't quite resonate, listen to the next one, the dark moon, and see if this one resonates more, because you may be actually born a little closer to the very, very end of the cycle. So the dark moon, and I would say this probably encompasses the last 72 hours, last 3 days of the lunar cycle into the dark moon. This is a space when, like I mentioned, I just want to don't get ahead of my notes. Most of the tools will not calculate this phase if you're just looking up like a lunar birth phase tool. Like I said, if you're born near the end of the cycle, consider this one too. Okay, so the core energy is emptiness, mystery, inner descent, and liminal space. So these people feel very comfortable on the edge in those liminal times. This is, if we were thinking about the solar year, this would be like right before Yule. Um, the core energy is about emptiness. It's about mystery. Oh, I already read that. Sorry, strength, deep intuition. So these people who are born at the very end of the cycle at the dark moon, they may be more deeply intuitive. They may have a strong connection to endings, more comfortable in those phases than some of the rest of us, and they may have find comfort in the unseen. Now, the challenges of being born at the dark moon right at the end of the cycle is that the people may feel more withdrawn from others, can feel heavier energy, and may find themselves isolated or isolating. So again, like when we're talking about all of this, and let us know if anybody who is a waning crescent resonates more with the dark moon energy, let us know in the chat. Now, to kind of like close this part of the episode, what I wanted to reiterate is that there is no better phase to be born under. The full moon is not better than the first quarter, than the waning gibbous, than the dark moon. Each of these lunar phases carries their own gifts. They also carry their own challenges and their own shadow side. And remember, this is always gives us places to work on. So the strengths of your lunar phase, if you don't see them in you, because oftentimes, like, I'll post about this, and without doing like a full episode like this, maybe I'll make a post in the group or something, and inevitably there's quite a few people who say, well, I don't relate to it at all. One thing could be that your birth data is off. That's probably less likely. That could be off like slightly, so it would be worth looking at the either side of yours. So if you're born, like for example, at the full moon, looking at the waxing gibbous and also looking at the waning gibbous to see if you resonate more with it. But I think that I would also consider why do the strengths not feel like they resonate for you? It could be something for you to work on. Because remember, our astrology, it's never meant to box us in, but it does give us potentials. So the things that you don't see, the strengths that you don't see in you, are potentials that you have, and they can be things for you to work towards. They can become goals that you do at your rituals or during your shadow work or doing any of your spiritual work, is really thinking about what are those strengths of that lunar phase, and how could I bring more of them into my life. Now, on the other hand, obviously the challenges and the shadow side can also give you ways to and pathways to work with. So if you find yourself really resonating with the shadow side of your lunar phase, those can be things for you to work on, kind of figuring out in your shadow work, where did they come from, how do they impact you, and what can I do to not let them go completely, really to be able to integrate them in, to be able to accept them and acknowledge them as part of me, and then to figure out how to transform them and to move past them, and that's really the gold of our shadow work. So again, tell us in the comments, what phase were you born in? Does it resonate for you? And also, it is interesting, like I noted in the beginning, to look at, once you know your own, look at the phase of other people in your lives who are important to you. Now, before I move into the Q&A, I did want to mention, I alluded to this in the beginning, what is your your power phase? So I think this is a really interesting idea. I don't remember the person's name, and I can't remember the year this happened. It was sometime in 1950s, 60s, I think. There was a doctor, and he was working in like fertility medicine, and he had found that his patients would some of his patients could ovulate at two different times of their menstrual cycle. So they would ovulate like as expected, like around days 14 to 17, and they would also, some of them would also ovulate at a different time. And according to him, he looked into this and he found out that they were ovulating during the moon phase when they were born. So very interesting, but eventually other people kind of picked up this work and began to think about it and talk about it, and sort of evolved it into something that can relate to all of us. So the idea here is that a person may feel more energized and they may feel their best at when the phase of the moon when they were born hits every cycle. So for example, if you were born at the first quarter moon, your power phase is the first quarter moon. So pay attention to the first quarter moon now when it hits every cycle, at least for the next couple of cycles, and see how you feel. He also, because of the work that this doctor had done, it was sort of intuited that people, like if you wanted to generalize this to the population, that people would be more creative during the phase of the moon when they were born. So you might be able to do more things, you might be able to manifest bigger things, even if that was like the dark moon, which is often at times when we think of like letting go. If you were born at the dark moon, that could be a time when you may have more manifestation energy, according to this theory. So if you're interested in that, what I recommend you doing is for the next 2 to 3 cycles, just put a mark on your calendar, like whatever your birth moon phase is, mark it on for the next couple of phases, and then pay attention to what's going on in your life during those times and just see for yourself, does it really feel like this is a power phase for you? All right, so I'm now going to go into the chat, and I also have a couple of questions that were left for me, and so we'll go through those as well. Leave in the chat if there's anything that you want to ask. It doesn't have to be about the moon phases of your birth. It can be about other things related to shadow work, witchcraft, energy work, but let us know in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to start with... let's see here. I've got several questions. We only got time for a couple, but so we can also get to the chat. And also, if you're watching back on YouTube, you can also leave your questions. I go back later and I will answer those. Lauren has a really good question here that I've been asked before, and I think a lot of people will relate to this one. She asked, does shadow work ever end? Like, can we ever get to the bottom of everything, or the bottom of the well? And she says, I'm guessing no, but just wondering what others think. So I'll give you my take on this. So the idea here is that, shadow work, what many people will tell you who really specialize in this, is that shadow work is a process of enlightenment. In fact, Carl Jung said that shadow work was the most authentic path to enlightenment. Some of you have heard me say this before. I don't like those extreme words, so I'm not going to say it's the most. It's a path, and it's very accessible for many people, so it's the one that a lot of us will choose. But because it is a path towards enlightenment, enlightenment likely for most of us does not end in this lifetime. Most of us are not on our last lifetime. I would say the vast majority of us, which means that your enlightenment isn't meant to be completed in this lifetime, but you are on a journey of enlightenment. So you're working on yourself. So in that respect, the short answer would be no, shadow work does not ever end in this lifetime. Now, what I want to really focus on here, though, in my answer, is that it is not meant to make people like feel the heaviness of it or despair or anything like that. I mean, I do think we live in like a society and a culture where we want quick fixes. I've literally I was at a witchy shop once and overheard a woman basically saying you don't have to do shadow work, you just had to pay her like $600. She would hypnotize you for an hour and all your problems would be gone. Sounds really great, right? Just like everything else in our culture, we want to take a pill and lose weight. We want quick fixes. We want to hit a button and order something, right? Everything in society has taught us like we want something really, really fast. We want to buy a cream and all our wrinkles are gone. And the reality is that that does work for some things. Oftentimes that works more with the physical body than it does with the spiritual. And so when it comes to our shadow work, we shouldn't really be looking for quick fixes. What we really should be doing is looking for progress. So it's always progress over perfection. It's always progress over stagnation. It's always progress over, fixating on completion. Now, what I do want to say though is that this does not mean that you need to be entrenched in your shadow work 24/7, 365 days a year, every single year of your life. That would be way too much for a person. So even me, as somebody who teaches shadow work, has made this my profession, I am not entrenched in my shadow work every single day. Even in our Shadow Seekers membership, we do other things. We're not always doing shadow work, we're doing other things too. And so that I think is kind of the longer answer to this. Like, no, probably shadow work doesn't end in this lifetime the same way as your spiritual journey doesn't end in this lifetime, the same way as your physical health doesn't end in this lifetime. You're always wanting to eat healthy, move your body, drink enough water, get enough sleep, do your shadow work, do your exercise, balance your chakras. All of it is like a process, but when it becomes too much, you take breaks from it. So this is why I always say, if people feel overwhelmed by the process, focus on it one day of the lunar cycle. I like the dark moon for that, but people may be attracted to a different day and have that be the day that you do your shadow work, your intentional shadow work. What you will also find, what I have found over years of doing this, is that there are just other times when you'll find yourself all of a sudden, I'm doing shadow work. And it could be any phase of the cycle. It's not the one I specifically chose to do the work. So I hope that helps. I'm always interested in other people's insight and what you guys think about the question as well. So you could leave in the chat and let us know. Let me go back to the chat here so we don't go too over here. Any other questions? I don't see a lot of questions in the chat, but Mercury retrograde may have me not actually seeing the full chat. So if I don't see your question, I promise I will get to it after this episode. But put questions in. I got another question here. Samantha asked, do you think pagans and others like of that kind of similar ilk will be ready when we are called to the purpose for which our spirits have been summoned to this world at this time? So there is this like kind of idea that we are hitting like a tipping point in the energetic and energy of the world. And I do believe that pagans, particularly people who are very tied to the earth cycles, are very special and unique. We've been called to this place at this time. The divine feminine has been kind of trampled over for centuries and centuries and centuries. We might even say millennia. And there is this growth, right, of people coming to religions and spiritualities that value the divine feminine as much as the divine masculine. We also see the kind of the shadow side of the masculine trampling over things. We see this in the way that we destroy our ecological our ecology, our world. I don't think a world that was fully committed to seeing both the divine feminine and divine masculine as important as each other would destroy the environment that we do. So we've become divorced. Many of us have become very divorced from the natural world. And I think witches and people who are more spiritual and feel very connected to the earth and earth-based religions and the divine feminine are here to help us heal the world and to help guide us back to that duality and away from the trampling of everything by that shadow side of the masculine. So I do think that, because it's part of our purpose, I do think that we are ready now and will be ready when the time comes. But I do think many of us are here to usher in that new kind of way of being. I think that each one of us, even if we just kind of keep our practices to ourselves, sometimes it can feel like we're one tiny little drop in such a huge ocean of people, and that is true, but every single little drop expands to every other, right? In the ocean, all of the water blends together. And so the more of us in the collective who kind of raise our energy and witness the revival of the divine feminine and really stand firm in it. I think part of that is fighting for women's rights and fighting for the rights of people of color and minorities and our LGBTQ plus population. Anybody who defends those who are, discriminated against. We're also, those are ways that we can make these changes in the world. And the more that we do that, the better that the world becomes, and the more that energy becomes pervasive. So I hope that helps to answer your question. So that's kind of my take on it. So let me see here. I did want to mention one other thing before we close here. And again, let us know if there's any questions you've got in the chat. So I've been noticing this in myself and in some people in our groups. People feeling very, a lot of heavy energy, people feeling very sluggish, very unmotivated, people feeling like they're unmotivated to do their practices, to do the things they want to do, and then feeling guilty about it. And I can say that I certainly relate to this, and I think that it's important to talk about, because I put a question in our Body Mind Witchcraft group earlier this week or late last week, about how people were feeling as we were moving towards the eclipse energy and the full moon and that lunar eclipse that we had last week. And a lot of people weighed in, and it was really startling. Almost everybody who weighed in said they were feeling very heavy energy, very sluggish, really hard to be motivated, feeling guilty for not doing their spiritual practices, or feeling that they're moving their spiritual path forward. And so I hope that anybody who saw that post realize that they were in good company. Like, it's not you, you're not alone. I'm feeling it too. So this is the time when you really want to lean into your spiritual practices. Part of the explanation for the energy can be that those eclipses, we're in eclipse season, but I think also collectively there's a lot of chaos and pain in the world right now. It's really hard to turn on the TV or even look at your social media and not become overwhelmed by everything that's going on. As an energetically sensitive person, you may also feel it more than others, and so I think that's why we're seeing so much of it in our groups and in our communities. So really leaning into your self-care, making sure you're getting enough to eat that's healthy, you're making sure you're getting enough to water to drink, making sure you're sleeping enough, getting enough movement. Wherever you feel like you're doing too much of one thing, trying to move to the other. Like if you're sleeping too much, making sure you're getting out to move. Also, I think it can be really helpful to have some kind of a practice at the end of the day where you cut off all of the cords that are attached to you that aren't your energy. Just send them gently back to where they came from, whether it's people that you personally know or stories that you read about in the news, or just simply the collective pain and terror that is experienced in many parts of the world right now. So I hope that helps a little bit to at least make you feel and know that you are not alone. Others are struggling too, myself included. And just be gentle with yourself. Remember, in our Body Mind Witchcraft group, this is always a great place to reach out, get support, and also in our Shadow Seekers group if you're part of our membership. Let me just share a bit about what's coming up for you before we close tonight. So next week, we're coming up upon Ostara. Ostara is actually I think this year it's on the 20th or the 21st. We're going to do the episode on Ostara on 3/17 because I like to do the episode before the Sabbath turns rather than after. So you have all of your practices and your ideas before the wheel actually turns. So we'll do that next week. And then on 3/24, I think we're going to talk about the moon signs. So for anybody who is wondering in the chat, today we were just talking about moon phases. We'll actually talk about the different signs that your moon can be in when you're born and what that can mean about you. And then to answer another question I saw earlier, someone had asked, they thought we were doing the elements. We're continuing the elements, and we are. We've already done air and fire, and we'll move on to water and earth. But I wanted to just take a little break from the elements, do a few other episodes, and we'll get back to those in April. So leave a heart in or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, and this will help us get this out to more people. And also, if you are not on our mailing list, I'm just going to drop a link here in the chat. You can sign up for our mailing list. You will also be sent the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work if you sign up. And then this will also be a good way that you will you'll find out about anything that's coming up, any events that we have or rituals. And I also send out the replay of this episode every week, as well as some tips and about witchcraft, shadow work, and energy work. Also, if you're watching back on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft. If you don't know about our channel, check it out. We're trying to get monetized this year, so every video that you watch helps us out tremendously. I don't see any more comments or any more questions in the chat, and I don't know if that's Mercury retrograde or they're just not here, but if they're not here, I will get to those later. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your night or day whenever you're watching this. As always, it's awesome to spend Tuesday evening with you. I'll look forward to seeing you next week, and until next time, blessed be.